What happens when the most dominant fighter in the UFC walks into a new weight class, wins the championship, and then faces a challenger who believes he can end the entire run in one night? That was the question hanging over UFC 330 in Philadelphia, where Islam Makhachev put the welterweight title on the line against Ian Machado Garry in one of the biggest fights of the summer. And this wasn't just another title defense. Makhachev entered the night chasing a piece of UFC history, while Garry had the opportunity to completely change the direction of his career. Makhachev came into UFC 330 with a 16-fight winning streak and a record of 28 wins against just one loss. After becoming one of the most dominant champions at lightweight, he moved up to welterweight and captured that division's belt by defeating Jack Della Maddalena in November 2025. Now, with his first defense of the 170-pound championship in front of him, the stakes were even bigger. A victory would give Makhachev 17 straight UFC wins, moving him beyond Anderson Silva's mark of 16 consecutive victories. But standing across from him was a fighter who had every reason to believe this was his moment. Ian Machado Garry entered UFC 330 with a 17-1 professional record and a 10-1 record inside the UFC. The Irish contender had built his reputation around his striking, distance control, size, and confidence, and he had already beaten major names including Belal Muhammad and Carlos Prates. Garry also had a physical advantage, standing 5 inches taller than Makhachev with a 4-inch reach advantage, giving him a very different set of tools to work with. And that's what made this matchup so fascinating. Makhachev's greatest strength has traditionally been his ability to control where a fight takes place, especially when he gets his opponent to the ground. His UFC profile lists 13 submission victories and an extraordinary 91% takedown defense. Garry, meanwhile, had the size and striking ability to make Makhachev work from the outside. So the central question was simple. Could Garry keep the champion at the end of his punches long enough to stop the takedowns, or would Makhachev eventually drag him into the kind of fight where he has dominated so many opponents? Garry certainly wasn't entering Philadelphia just hoping to survive. Before the fight, he predicted a 4th-round finish and made it clear that he viewed UFC 330 as a chance to establish himself among the sport's elite. A victory would have done much more than put a championship belt around his waist. It would have stopped Makhachev's historic winning streak, handed the former lightweight king his 2nd professional loss, and made Garry only the 2nd Irish UFC champion after Conor McGregor. That's the kind of opportunity that can turn a contender into a superstar overnight. But UFC 330 wasn't only about the main event. The co-main event featured another championship fight, with Mackenzie Dern defending the women's strawweight title against Gillian Robertson. Dern was making the first defense of the belt she won in October 2025, while Robertson arrived on a 5-fight winning streak and with one of the strongest submission resumes in women's UFC history. Robertson holds the UFC record for women's submission victories, so this was another matchup where the ground game could become the deciding factor. There was also an interesting personal edge to that fight. Robertson had openly questioned Dern's accomplishments and wanted to prove that her own grappling was superior. Dern, however, brushed off the drama and emphasized that she had evolved into a complete mixed martial artist rather than relying only on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That created a very different kind of tension from the main event. Makhachev and Garry represented a collision between an established champion and a rising star, while Dern and Robertson brought 2 elite grapplers into a fight where neither wanted to give the other an advantage on the mat. UFC 330 also marked the promotion's return to Philadelphia, with the event taking place at Xfinity Mobile Arena and the main card streaming exclusively on Paramount+. The main card was scheduled for 9 p.m. Eastern, following the prelims and early prelims earlier in the evening. For American fans, this was more than a loaded fight card. It was the UFC's return to a major fight market with 2 championship fights at the top and one of the sport's biggest current stars trying to make history. And that's ultimately why Makhachev vs Machado Garry was so important. One fighter was trying to extend a historic run and strengthen an already extraordinary legacy. The other was trying to take the fastest possible route from highly regarded contender to undisputed superstar. UFC 330 wasn't simply about who walked out of the octagon with a belt. It was about whether the next chapter of the UFC welterweight division would still belong to Islam Makhachev, or whether Ian Machado Garry was finally ready to take it for himself. As UFC 330 arrived in Philadelphia, one thing was certain. History was on the line, 2 championship belts were at stake, and the margin for error was almost non-existent. Sometimes a fight is remembered because of what was expected to happen. Other times, it's remembered because everything changes once the cage door closes. This was one of those nights where either possibility could become reality. If you found this update helpful, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Prime Wire, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest news. Thanks for watching.